Data is big, but its potential is even bigger. When combined with analytics and AI, data holds the promise of curing diseases, saving lives, reversing climate change, and changing the way we live. We believe the future depends on data and unlocking its limitless potential. We're here to make that happen. Databricks is the lakehouse company. We help data teams, engineers, analysts, and scientists work together to find value inside data and solve the world's toughest problems. Because the challenges we face as businesses, as people, and as a planet aren't easy. They can't be solved in silos. They can't be solved by one person. We need all the data, all the science, all the brain power. We need all hands on deck in one place, on the only open, unified platform for data management, business analytics, and machine learning. And that changes everything. It expands our sense of what's possible. It makes things simple. It turns weeks into minutes so data teams can innovate faster, because that's how innovation should happen, collaborative and fast. So let's defy assumptions, break the mold, map every genome, cure every cancer, binge watch the cosmos, spelunk black holes, make every voice heard, reverse count, unlock take more moonshots and land them.
The heavens have become a part of man's work.
From now on, nothing stands between you and your data, you and the answers, because the power of data is the power of knowing. Now, you know.
Welcome, everyone, to our talk on the Generative AI Payoff in 2024 for enterprises. I'm Naveen Rao, and I'll be introducing the topic here going forward. We have a lot of great content towards the end as well, so please stay tuned. So, introduction, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the problems that we see. Generative AI is brand new, and we see that there's a lot of excitement. But the reality is, when we start deploying these things in an enterprise context, there are lots of different things we have to think about. Consumer is one thing, enterprise has many different needs around accuracy and other things. So I'm going to show you a few examples of where current techniques break down. And then later on, we're going to show you how we start addressing those with some product announcements. So there's a few things here that have never been announced before. You're going to be seeing a lot more from us over the next coming months. And also, we've already previewed some of this stuff with some of our customers like ADP, and they're going to be here talking about their experience as well. All right, as I mentioned, my name is Naveen Rao. I was previously the CEO of Mosaic ML, which was acquired by Databricks just about 8 months ago. In that time, we've been working pretty feverishly on integrating our products into a better experience overall into Databricks, and really leveraging the tools of Databricks to build something that no one else has and solve some real needs for the enterprise. So, as I mentioned, Gen AI is a big topic these days. Every board seems to have a mandate, start implementing Gen AI in our products, in our workflows, in our operational processes. So everybody has something. 91% of companies are doing this, and 75% of CEOs are saying that they have to use Gen AI to gain a competitive advantage. But what are some of the problems here? So, you may have heard of the end of humanity and all of this kind of stuff. It's gotten a lot of headlines, but really that's not the problems that we have today at hand. We have things that are much more near term and that we need to solve, and they're really technology problems that can be solved. We believe if we solve these things, we can actually start to realize some of these gains where a lot of knowledge work can be automated and augment humans to do more with less. Here's a great example that we found just recently. This is a Chevrolet dealership selling trucks, and they put up a chatbot that could answer customer questions and guide them to the right products. What's interesting about this is that it actually pulled up the Ford F-150, which is one of their main competitors, as a recommendation. Clearly, that's something that we don't want. If you're an enterprise, you have to be able to control this kind of behavior. This is not appropriate to start talking about competitors' products as a recommendation. So this thing is really lacking enterprise context. And, for applications in the enterprise, things that are driving, customer acquisition or reducing customer churn, that kind of a thing, accuracy is super important. You have to be correct in what you say. And that was an example of kind of accuracy being off. In addition to that, we have to have safety. We can't have models that are actually saying things that are unsafe to a business, but also unsafe to people. I mean, if you're talking to a car dealership and you start trying to take the chatbot down a different direction, it should stop you. So these are kind of these roadblocks and guardrails that we need to put in place to make sure that these applications can actually be deployed. And then governance is we need to make sure that the data that's being output by the LLM is actually meant for that user. Perhaps somebody could have different tiers where certain information is appropriate for certain users, but all of that needs to be built in the back end. We need to actually have real access control and governance around the data that these models can serve. So there's a big challenge here where everybody's trying Gen AI, they're doing POCs in the enterprise, but 90% of enterprises are not really confident in going to production. And it's because of these reasons we just discussed. They're not accurate enough. We can't trust them. I can't say that they're really going to be helpful to my business if they're doing things like recommending competitors' products. Here's another few examples. So at Databricks, all of the employees are called Bricksters. This is just a term that we use internally, but it's not a term that you probably would see on the internet so much. So if you ask GPT-4 here, a Brickster is a character from a Lego Island video game. It doesn't have the semantics of understanding what that means when someone at Databricks asks this question. So that's lacking semantics and context. There was yet another hallucination that caused some issues with Air Canada just recently. The chatbot offered a refund to a customer when it shouldn't have, and now the airline is having to actually do this. And so I think this is the problem, is that when you make these bots actually be able to present information and make choices, they have to be accurate. And I think this hallucination actually costs this company money. Imagine if this is happening at scale. If there are millions of such customers, that could really impact the bottom line of a company. And this one is kind of another chatbot that's with a car dealership. It's another Chevrolet dealership, but it actually offered a Chevy Tahoe, a large SUV, for $1. And it said, here's a legally binding offer. If something from a company says that on their website, it kind of has to be legally binding. So we can't have these sorts of things coming out. You can't have humans checking every one of these conversations. It's just too much work. And here's actually a kind of an amusing one. If you've ever used a chatbot, OpenAI or our chatbots or any others, you would see that sometimes they say they apologize. I can't do this task. Well, we need to catch that before it goes live on a website. So in this particular instance, these are product descriptions that were meant to come out of an LLM, a large language model. And they probably have some sort of input that was supposed to drive a useful, maybe even customized output as a description here. But clearly there was something wrong, and it says, I cannot fulfill this request. Somebody needs to filter that. It wasn't, you can't just put the raw content out there. And finally, governance is about, not driving information that outward that should not be presented to that user. So Hanlon is our CTO of AI, and Matei is our CTO of Databricks. And, if Hanlon's asking a question about a phone plan, saying it's too expensive, you can't then offer up Matei's plan and say, this is Matei's plan. That violates privacy. So we need to have governance on these things. So it's, everyone's very excited about the capabilities, and their capabilities are amazing. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we don't violate the standard rules that we set forth. These are not new problems. They're just new problems in the world of generative AI. So really, for application quality for enterprises, is that we need accuracy, safety, and governance, but we really need that customized on customer data. The initial way to do that was really prompt engineering, or putting information into the prompt. We call this augmented generation, where I can put enterprise context within the prompt. That does work, but it doesn't work perfectly. It doesn't work for every situation. And that's the kind of tools that we offer here at Databricks. So three unique things about us in generative AI specifically are, we get you to production quality. Production quality is all of these things. It's the guardrails. It's the, the way the wording comes out. All of that needs to be controlled and customized for a particular customer. If you're a car dealership talking to car buyers, it's very different than a bank talking to banking customers, for instance. So these are different sorts of outputs. They have different flavors of language use, and all of that needs to be customized. And we need complete ownership over these things. As we start to customize models and their behavior and the outputs of the whole system, that's actually an IP creation event. Building something that actually services my customers better than my competition is a competitive advantage. It actually makes the company potentially be able to have greater sales or less turnover or some other way of increasing revenue. So that is IP creation in of itself. So, giving that to another company may not be the right decision. And all of this stuff is done with the lowest possible cost, doing it with the most efficiency possible. At Mosaic, one of the things we really did up front was address the problem of growing cost and making sure that we use compute most effectively. We could train a model with the least possible amount of compute and also serve that model with the least possible amount of compute. And so we've now crafted this whole platform into something that we believe leads us to maximizing generative AI quality. This is not something other people say. It's not about entertainment. It's about quality of output. A token or a word is in and of itself not very important unless it has a lot of meaning around it. That's what we mean by quality. Get the best possible words out there. You can kind of equate this to, I can watch a lot of bad content on YouTube, but there's only a few different pieces of content that are really important on YouTube. And it's the same kind of thing with produced content or produced text that come out of these LLMs. The quality is extremely important. And that quality means something different for every context and every company that rolls it out. So optimizing app quality is not simple. There's a lot that goes into it. Part of it is the model itself. We've talked about this in other places, and the whole industry has gotten very excited around companies that can build great models. And so that is where things start. But then actually tuning that model for the particular enterprise and the particular domain, it can be very important. And then actually inserting into the prompt the right information to answer the questions is also very important. That's through a vector DB and an embedding model that pulls the right stuff into that approximate match of the vector DB. We'll get into details in a moment. All of these things can work in concert, by the way. I can fine-tune a model on a domain. I can adapt it to that domain, and then I can use a vector database with an embedding model to actually get better results. So all of these things work together. This is not one thing. And then outside of the main pipeline, we have the UI, of course, how we actually consume the content. And then we have monitoring of that content, making sure there is no PII, actually maybe doing some post-generation filtering. And then all of this lives within the confines of Unity Catalog, where we have a governance structure with access control on top of it. And so overall, Databricks is the best place to build customized Gen AI. And this is extremely important for enterprise, as we've just noted. So bringing the best possible model from, building the best possible model from scratch, if a customer has a lot of data, is called pre-training. Then tuning that model to behave the way it needs to in a particular context, we can call that fine-tuning or adaptation. And then using things like retrieval augmented generation to bring in the right content to actually make that LLM produce the right outputs for the business. So complete ownership and control of the model is something that we kind of uniquely have. If you go to any other provider, even though they may do fine-tuning, they don't actually give you the weights of the model. We not only fine-tune the model using our tools, we do so on open source models. Those models, that resultant model after fine-tuning is yours. That is your IP. Creating that model, those weights are your weights. And so I think this is actually very important, not just for IP ownership, but also for data security. When a model is tuned or pre-trained on data, it can actually memorize that data. So if you don't know where the model weights went, you actually don't know where your data went. There is a potential for leakage here because they can verbatim spit out data that they were trained on. So that's very important to maintain control of the model weights over time. So that's maintain differentiation and control and privacy. So we actually enable all of these different parts of the stack, as we've talked about, starting with prompt engineering. That's the simplest thing you can do. we're building tools to make that easier for your business. And in fact, we start seeing patterns across different verticals that we can kind of give people great starting points here. It's like this model with that prompt engineering works really well. The next level tends to be, hey, I have a whole bunch of documents in Databricks. I want to now combine that with my LLM and generate some outputs. Call that retrieval augmented generation. That needs a vector database. We have these components, and now we've put together some patterns that make it very easy to use. And you're going to see a demo of this shortly. The next level is then fine-tuning a model for your particular domain and adapting it to that. Again, you can use this with RAG, with prompt engineering. All of these techniques work together. And finally, for the most advanced users is full pre-training. This is actually taking a model that's been that's completely from scratch, taking lots of data, like 1 trillion words, and actually training a model completely from scratch for a particular purpose. We actually see a lot of customers doing this who have already gone through the pain of gathering these data sets and want to create something truly unique. One such example of pre-training is Replit. Replit is a shared IDE where developers can actually co-develop applications and write code together, even though they're remote. It's actually quite a cool tool. And what they want to do is build something that does code completion, code generation, code checking in real time in the IDE. Since it's a shared IDE environment, everything is live. And one thing that was very important to them was latency. So the way to reduce latency is to actually make a smaller model. They don't need that model to be very good at world history or something like that. They really need it to be great at coding. And so they have a ton of data from their users that they could use to actually train a model. They built a model from scratch with us, 2.7 billion parameter model. They actually open sourced it. They did it in 3 days. And basically a very small team there, 2 people, 3 days, a lot of great data from their platform, and they were able to get a model out that was state of the art. So it's a pretty cool success story. And company like Replit, they're a startup. They're growing very fast, and cost is very important to them. They can't spend millions of dollars on these kinds of things, and so they came to us to help them do this in the most cost-effective way as possible. So this is one of the things we prided ourselves on from the start. Was we started talking about Mosaic's law, which was every year a neural network that has a certain capability will continue to decrease in cost of training by a factor of 4. And we're actually starting to see that. This was an example of stable diffusion training. It's actually more than a factor of 4. It was something like 600K that was advertised in 2022 by other folks. We brought it down to 160K in 2023, and now it's below 50K. I think it's even lower than this now. Keeps coming down as we get better at optimization, better algorithmic methods, all kinds of tweaks to the whole learning and training pipeline. And with LLMs, we saw something very similar. We saw in 2022, at the end of 2022, I think in October, it was about $450,000 to train a GPT-3 level model. That's now something on the order of 75K. So this keeps coming down. It makes everything more accessible, and we are starting to see many more applications incorporate custom LLMs. All right, with that, I want to hand it over to Eric Peter, who's going to tell you about our retrieval augmented generation pipeline. Eric, take it away.
Thanks, Naveen. I'm Eric Peter, one of the product managers on our Mosaic AI platform team. I'm here today to talk to you about retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. What is RAG? RAG is one of the most popular design patterns for generative AI applications today. RAG is required if you want to connect your real-time business data to customize your generative AI application. Now, RAG apps are real-time, batch, and streaming. On the left, real-time apps, this is the most popular form of RAG. An example here is a chatbot that can answer questions about your policies. However, some applications are also batch and streaming. For example, perhaps a pipeline that updates a questionnaire every time new documents about a customer are uploaded. Let's go through an example of what RAG is under the hood. A common use case we've heard from our customers is they want to build a bot to help customer support reps find answers faster. In fact, we at Databricks also have this use case and have built a similar bot. So I'm going to walk you through the simplest architecture in order to build a bot that could answer questions like, why would a data engineer want to use DLT? So first, the question comes into a chain orchestrator. The chain orchestrator is the hub or the brain of your AI system. It then uses an embedding LLM to embed the question to understand its semantic intent and meaning. That is then passed to a vector database, which has been preloaded, in our case, with the Databricks documentation. Relevant docs are returned. Prompt engineering is used to prompt a foundational model with the user's question and these relevant docs. And then it's passed to an instruction following LLM. The response is then returned back to the user. Now, this is the simplest example, and most production RAG applications are more complicated than this, but hopefully this helps you understand the high level of the pattern. Now, in talking to the thousands of customers that are doing RAG on our platform today, what we've heard is that their biggest challenge is accuracy. This is not to minimize the challenging data prep process, the challenging productionization process, or the challenges with getting governance in place around their applications, but rather that getting high quality RAG applications is incredibly difficult and is often a blocker to putting these applications into production and ultimately seeing business value from these solutions. Why is it hard? Well, first, folks are unsure what are the right ways to measure and evaluate bot accuracy. They're unsure how to get enough human feedback to understand if their bot is answering correctly or not. Third, it's difficult for them to use the feedback to actually improve the accuracy of the bot and have fast loops to reduce its hallucination. Finally, once you have a quality bot, how do you make sure that it doesn't accidentally go unhinged and talk about a competitor or say a bad word to one of your customers? How do you put guardrails in place? Our belief here at Databricks is that RAG quality is a systems problem. Now, model quality, of course, is important, but model quality is not sufficient to have a high quality RAG application. We believe it's one part, how do you prepare your unstructured and your structured data? It's one part, which foundational and embedding models do you use, off the shelf or fine-tuned? And it's how you compose your RAG chain, everything from how you understand the user's query to how you do retrieval and re-ranking, how you prompt the model, how you post-process it, and what guardrails do you have in place. This is, again, a simplified diagram. There's a lot more complexity under the hood, but this is how we're thinking about the RAG quality problem here at Databricks. So today, I'm really excited to announce the private preview of new capabilities on Databricks, our best-in-class workflow and evaluation tools for building high-quality RAG applications. These tools and workflow are tightly integrated with the rest of the data intelligence platform, with our popular MLflow open source tools and the Mosaic AI capabilities. This offering, it provides out-of-the-box access to the cutting-edge research that's happening in our Mosaic research team, specifically around how to improve the quality of your application. I'll talk more about this in a second. Now, let me quickly go over our approach before I hop into a demo of these capabilities. So first, our tools enable a fast developer velocity. This lets you experiment quickly with different settings to find the optimal ones that drive quality in your application. Two, we make it really easy to collect feedback so you can understand how well your application is performing. Three, we make it easy to measure quantitative metrics with that feedback so you can compare different versions of your application on quality, cost, and latency. Now, these capabilities that I mentioned, you have two ways that you can use them. First, you can use our entire workflow tightly integrated and embedded with the rest of our Mosaic platform. Or if you already have an existing RAG application or you prefer using your own developer workflow, you can use our evaluation and LLM judge components, which I'll talk about shortly, separately with the logs of your application. With that, let's go ahead and hop into a demo. So one of the questions that I often get is, well, what research is the Mosaic team working on? And honestly, I wanted to have a way for people inside Databricks to be able to ask questions of what our Mosaic team was doing. So what I'm going to build today is a bot that takes a set of PDF files, the recent papers published by our research lab that are stored in a Unity catalog volume, and I'm going to turn them into a RAG chatbot. So first, I need to create a vector index. Now, this is incredibly simple on our platform. What I've done beforehand is I built a data pipeline to take these documents, these PDFs, pull them from the UC volume, parse them, chunk them, and put them into this Delta table. Now, how do I create a vector search index? It's incredibly simple. Any Delta table inside your Databricks platform can be turned into a vector search index with a click of a button. You click Create Vector Search Index, you tell us the name, choose the key, choose your endpoint. In this case, I've already computed embeddings, but you can have us also compute the embeddings for your application here. You can do triggered or continuous. This is also available through an API if you prefer to run it in CI/CD or from a notebook. In the interest of time, I already created this vector search index, which you can see here is online and synced with that chunk table I showed you a second ago. Now, I need to create the chain, or the brains of my application that I mentioned before. With our tools, you can use one of the popular open source frameworks, such as LangChain, or you can write your own Python code. In this case, I've pulled one of our examples for a chat over PDF files and have a very simple chain here. The important thing that I want to call out is this right here. We give you a way to parameterize your chain. Now, this is important, and I'll show you why later, but specifically, it helps you quickly iterate on different settings to improve quality. So in our case, I've linked in the vector index that I built. I've indicated which embedding model is being used, and I've put in a prompt for us to use. I'm going to use Azure OpenAI, but I could have used any model that's hosted on Model Serving, one of our foundational open source models, OpenAI, or any of the other proprietary LLMs out there. I'll switch that back over to my notebook now. Here, I'm going to go ahead. I'll run the chain just to make sure it works. This is the same as debugging any Python code. And then what I'll do, once I've verified that it works locally in the notebook, I'm going to log the chain to Unity catalog. So in this case, I'm logging a version of the chain with the configuration file I showed you and the code of it here. This is stored and governed just like any asset in your Unity catalog. Next, I'm going to deploy the chain. Now, this is important. There's actually a lot of complexity that's happening under the hood once we deploy the chain, but it's all abstracted into this simple command. We stand up a REST API. We stand up a review application so your end users can access the chatbot, and we enable online monitoring and metric measurement throughout the entire chain. Let me dive in and show you exactly what that looks like. So first, let's go ahead and just try that. Now, one of the recent papers that came out is called Aries. So let's ask, what is Aries? Now, Aries is a system that evaluates reading comprehension and generation. The bot's hallucinating a little bit here. So I can look and try to figure out why. I can see what sources. Does it have the right sources? What is this paper? Well, this is, I can tell, this is the Aries paper. So the bot is just hallucinating and not staying faithful here. So in this case, I'll say, no, this was not a good response. Now this is important because you can share this app with any user in your company so that they can give you feedback. So let me fast forward a little bit. I've shared the app with several folks on our research team so they can try out a variety of different questions. And under the hood, what happens here is that every single request is being logged through inference tables into a Delta table in your system. And so in this case, the question, what is DSPy? The full trace of what happened in the chain. Now, earlier I showed you the chain. It had a generation step. It had a retrieval step. These are all logged here for easy debugging later. Now, in addition to this logs, you have the logs of the human feedback that came through the application. So in this case, you can see what the human feedback was. And one question, it was correct. The one I just marked was wrong. Now, Unfortunately, our research team doesn't have a lot of time available. And so I'm not going to be able to have them ask every single possible question and evaluate it. Luckily, the team has built LLM judge models that we expose within our evaluation tools. So what is an LLM judge? An LLM judge is a specially tuned LLM that can help you assess the quality and accuracy of the bot. For example, taking a detailed look to see if it's hallucinating or not hallucinating, like I showed you earlier. Now, our research team, this helps you scale human evaluation by using an LLM to evaluate RAG outputs for quality. Now, these models are validated by our research team. We've validated them on open source data sets and on some customer data sets, and they're incredibly easy to run. So in this case, what I've done is I've created an evaluation set, which is a concept inside the product. Really just a set of questions that we expect users to ask about the bot. I could have optionally attached ground truth, but I don't need to. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to run the various different judges on top of this. In specific, I'm going to look at the faithfulness. Is the bot hallucinating? This is simple. I just call evaluate. I pass in that table I showed you, and I pass in the version of the model. I'll first run it with the first version. Now, let me come over here and I'll look at our dashboard. This is automatically generated, both offline and online. And you can see it helps you answer questions like, how performant is the model? What's its cost? How relevant are the retrievals? How are the generations doing? Are they harmful? Let's focus on that faithfulness or hallucination. So you can see, I got one question. We're at about 55%. That's not great. Half the time we're hallucinating. So what are we going to do? So in the background, I actually kind of dug a little bit more into what was happening. And what I realized was that I needed to adjust the model's prompt. I did this by looking at some of the different aspects. And I wanted to tweak the retrieval strategy as well. So I've gone, and in interest of time, I've actually deployed already the next version of the application, again, using these same things. And we can see this here deployed in another window. I can say, what is Aries? And in this case, it's not hallucinating. A retrieval augmented generation system. Great. So now what I'm going to do, this is just a one-off ad hoc thing. So let me come back over here. I'm going to adjust my judge configuration. I'm going to evaluate both version 1 and 2. And I'll come over to the dashboard that's generated. And I'll look. And I can see my faithfulness metric here. I can see it's gone up to 83%. For me, I'm ready to deploy this out to production. And so the best part of all of this is while I showed you this chain code and the configuration in a notebook, I can just check those artifacts into Git. I can run a CI/CD workflow, including the offline evaluation, and deploy this directly into production. So in summary, it's a preview of our workflow and evaluation tool, built specifically to help you build high-quality RAG applications. If you're interested in joining the private preview, please scan the QR code or go to the link on your screen so you can register your interest. Coming up next, I'm really excited to have ADP join us. We've partnered with ADP for many years, and they're one of our most strategic customers. Fernando and team, they deal with a ton of sensitive data, but through a lot of planning and security and governance enabled by their lakehouse, they've already made multiple generative AI applications available in production and are one of our leading customer use cases. I'm really excited to welcome Fernando. I know that they're looking to deploy at an even larger scale with future applications, and they're working with some of the largest deployments that we've seen out there. They've tried the tools that I've mentioned before, and again, welcome, Fernando. We're super excited to have you here. Over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Eric, for the kind words and the introduction, and thank you, Databricks team, for the invitation. I'm invited here to talk about how ADP is using Databricks as part of our generative AI initiatives. And so let's get down to business. First of all, maybe a quick overview about what is ADP, who we are. Maybe you've seen us in your paycheck in some of the jobs that you have now or in the past. And so just to give you an idea, right, we are a company that provides solutions that support the world of work, across the board. We do human resources, HR, benefits, talent, payroll, and time management. And if you look at the numbers, right, 1 out of 6 of the workers in the US are currently employed by a company that uses ADP as their system. We have over 1 million clients, so pretty large scale. We are in 140 countries with over 41 million global workers that are paid through our platform. And we're the #1 HCM application. HCM stands for Human Capital Management. So you can imagine that, when you work with ADP, you're working with a pretty amazing trove of data in a very unique space. And because of that, the challenges associated to that, we've been partnering deeply with Databricks, and super excited to be here to talk about that. So what are we up to at ADP when it comes to generative AI? I'm going to give you a sense of that, and then I'll tell you a little bit about the challenges and how our partnership with Databricks is helping surpass those challenges. But first of all, what is it that we're doing at ADP with Gen AI? And here's like one of our main topics. We're building something called the ADP Assist. So ADP Assist, like many of the tools that are out there, is a tool that allows our platforms to be more interactive and user-friendly to our people, right? So we want to, one of our guiding principles is what we're called this pyramid. And the pyramid, it goes by easy, smart, and human. So we want our products as a baseline to be easy to use. But not only we want them to be easy to use, we want them to be smart. But not just want them to be smart, we strive for them to have this feeling of being human. And I believe that with generative AI today, we're definitely moving in that direction. Of course, we haven't made it human yet, but it's getting there, right? And so what are we stand for in terms of ADP Assist? Well, we have, as we mentioned, the largest and deepest data sets in human capital management, with over 1 million companies that are clients that are using our software globally. We want to talk about make payroll easy. Hey, how can we make payroll easy to our clients? How can we make analytics smarter? How can we give human insights to companies that use our software? How do we help them search by intent? All these while remaining secure, ethical, and responsible, right? So this is kind of the challenge that we're facing, and I'll tell you a little bit more detail around that. So when you think about the biggest challenges across the board, again, from going from smart into human, right, and easy in the way, what we see is that we have these 4 areas that are kind of stand out. How to achieve quality, huge problem. How to protect IP. How do we access unstructured data, and how do we control the cost to achieve ROI? These are like 4 topic areas that we are discussing across the board. So for instance, what does it mean to achieve quality? We have really important products, right, that are revolving around payroll, for instance. We need to make sure that the answers that we get are high quality. If we're going to advise someone what to do about their payroll, what to do about their taxes, how do we make sure that we advise the right answers? And unfortunately, we've seen in the media recently, right, that some companies are putting tools like generative AI tools out there that are having challenges and difficulties, and they're making the news for the wrong reason, right? These tools, as we all know, tend to hallucinate, tend to produce answers. If you don't really have the right guardrails in place, they tend to say things that aren't quite true. And so when it comes to quality, it is a huge area of concern for us to make sure that our products remain of a high quality. Now, in terms of IP, we want to protect our clients' rights in their data, and we want to, we want to protect the IP of our clients, but this is a huge topic, right? So when you are someone that uses a platform that has generative AI in it, you can understand that some of the data you may want this, right, to be exposed to this AI, but then the question is, how do you make sure that there's no IP issues in the mix? Similarly, when we have to use systems and build systems to access unstructured data, so as you all may be familiar with, right, many of the systems that we're building are doing what's called RAG, retrieval augmented generation. I'll talk a little bit more about the strategy and the tools that we're using, but in the retrieval augmented generation space, we are basically retrieving content that is not structured, right, for use of this technology. So how do you access unstructured data? This is really important because you need to format the data. How do you create the right type of data sets? How do you structure the data in a way that is accessible from the LLMs and you can produce quality results? And finally, like, how do you control cost? Think about, among the solutions that are out there, there's plenty of differences, right? Not all LLMs, not all generative AI is created equal, and there's a huge cost range there. So how do we control cost, right? That's one of the topics that really becomes one of the challenges that bring to the table and the conversation with Databricks. Now, when you look at ADP and our data strategy, let's talk a little bit about what we're trying to achieve. This is something that we're kind of currently still sort of working on this, right? But at a high level, we're interested in doing 4 things with our data products. One, we want to elevate brand with thought leadership. So we want to make sure that our partners and our clients, right, feel that they are using the latest and greatest and safest technology when they work with ADP, and that's something that we're really can stand behind and be proud of. We want to improve our business operation, like kind of more practical things, right? We want to drive efficiencies. Hey, how do we improve sales and marketing and customer support? And many of you are already in the Gen AI journey, talking about like perhaps service centers and support centers. How do you make those more efficient? I think that you've probably have seen or at least tested some generative AI solutions that really make your service centers more efficient. Reimagine product. This is kind of an area that's dear to my heart. Our products, of course, can be infused with generative AI. And how do we ultimately make our clients, our customers happy, right? How do we make them happy? Because we want them to be able to use our products in a better way. Finally, we have another area, part of the data strategy, which is to commercialize our data. And this is an area that's also very interesting for us, because as we collect, or as our systems really are used by a large chunk of the workforce in the US and throughout the world, there is a footprint that they leave regarding the data. Of course, this is all anonymized and aggregated, right? But we can get a lot of insights out of the data that goes through our systems regarding aggregations of this data that talk about the world of work. And so this has tremendous value for companies. And so we're imagining that, hey, when we talk about data and AI, these are the 4 things that we want to achieve. We want to elevate our brand through thought leadership. We want to improve our business operations. We want to reimagine product, and we want to commercialize our data. These are like the 4 main pillars of our strategy around data and AI. Now, in order to achieve those strategies, we're building 2 foundational items. One is called the One AI, which is our central AI platform. And the other one is our One Data, which is called our central data platform. Now, you can imagine that, of course, One AI is built on top of One Data. And these are 2 tools that are going to allow us to reach our potential and fulfill our strategy. So we've been partnering with Databricks and others in the space to build these components and these pieces of this One Data and One AI platform. Now, I can say that, for instance, tools like Delta Lake are broadly used in One Data. And of course, there's a governance piece tied to this, which has to do with catalog, the catalog, which helps us with other areas like observability and like all the areas that have to do with governance. Myself and my team, the core AI team, are kind of building this One AI platform today. We are tasked with basically doing that, as well as building a center of excellence that's gonna, that is already working with many of our business units, but we're going to scale that right across the operation. But what we're scaling is basically we're scaling a partnership with business units, and we bring along this One AI platform. And what is this One AI platform? The One AI platform has many components. Many of those are tied to Databricks capabilities like model serving, LMOps, vector search, and so on and so forth. Right? That what you're seeing here. Of course, this is a range of tools that cover other technology firms as well. But in Databricks, we find an excellent partner to develop these areas. And so with that said, I'll continue to how Databricks is supporting our platform these days. You can imagine that Databricks has a ton of use cases there, and particularly we're building upon our experience around One Data to build upon that and to expand, right? So we're looking to achieving the highest quality, and then, for instance, we're working with the Mosaic team to talk about like how do you achieve quality and how do you measure quality. And we're working also POCs in RAG Studio today to make sure that we're using that capability that makes it quite easy to scale. Once you have something like the Databricks platform, I mean, one of the pain points, right, in the enterprise around these platforms is like the permissioning piece and whatnot. So if you figure out a platform that allows you to sort of have all this under wraps, then scaling it makes it much easier. Control. Again, we're looking at Mosaic tool to fine-tune some models, and also to fine-tune maybe open source models in-house. Again, we're sort of just getting started with that, but it'll be remiss not to mention that. The governance piece, of course, is in top of mind to most of our clients and the leadership, right? Hey, you're scaling generative AI across the organization. How do you make sure that everything is governed and that you don't have like rogue teams building their own thing and that it's very difficult to rein in? So Unity Catalog, for instance, provides with a very good solution for that around like vector indexes and whatnot. Again, I think that the space is evolving quickly and we're really trying to wrap our head around all these parts, but we see that the capabilities by Databricks are quite substantial. Last but not least has to do with controlling cost. And as you can see that, cost becomes a huge issue. Like, a year ago when we got started with generative AI, I remember having meetings about like, hey, are we going to talk about cost? And I think at that time, most of our executives were like interested in proving out that these capabilities can perform as expected. There's a lot of expectations in the market, like, hey, generative AI is really going to revolutionize the space. How do we make sure that is it really doable? Is it possible? It turns out that yes, we can do a lot with generative AI, and but when we get the bills for generative AI, people take a deep breath and say like, hey, how can we now cost contain? So I think that the natural progression here is that first there's all this enthusiasm around generative AI and all this POC world. Like we spent most of last year building POCs around generative AI. And now we're thinking, okay, great, this works. Now let's just make it viable, right? So make it viable means cost controlling. And so tools like, spinning smaller models, more fine-tuned models, in-house hosted models are going to be the way to go in many of these cases where you're trying to move away from like sort of the off-the-shelf models that, you paper token at a really high rate. And so, look, I think we're coming up on time, and I really appreciate the opportunity here to talk. I just want to show you that, throw away my contact info. My name is Fernando Schwartz. I'm VP of AI at ADP, head of the core AI team. And, the space is really evolving quickly. We have pretty interesting job opportunities out there. So if you're interested, please feel free to reach out. There's my email address right there, and my LinkedIn. I'm always posting sort of job openings in the LinkedIn. So if you want to connect or follow or whatever, I'll be happy to loop you guys in. Well, once again, thanks Databricks team for the invitation to talk here.